I begin by hammering a 3/4 inch to 1 inch taper on the end of the material. Once I have that taper established, I hang over the taper plus about a 1/2 inch, and I strike with half-faced blows, aiming for the rounded edge of the far side of my anvil. I have a place that's rounded off. That way, when I hammer half-faced blows, it doesn't create too sharp of a transition. Now I'm going to clean up that transition. My anvil is very, very wide, so sometimes I just angle my tongs off to the side in order to be able to straighten this out without my tongs interfering too much. So you can see me straightening this, evening out that taper, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make it round. So I hit the corners of the diamond. So on the cross section of the squared off part, I'm knocking down the corners. And then once I turn it into an octagon, I'm going to hit and turn my piece repeatedly. I'm hitting in a bunch of blows that blend on top of one another and make my stem look round. And now I'm going to start flattening out my leaf form. I start with the highest point up and I hit that point down to start. Otherwise it can fold over on itself. So I want to hit the widest point first. And now I'm angling my hammer subtly from side to side to try to spread it horizontally. I'm actually at this point using the fuller to create that spade shape. So when I'm hammering, the fuller is making a texture that is kind of like an arrow pointing towards the center. And that's not going to be the final texture. I'm going to use the fuller to spread out that spade, and then I go back to the round side of my hammer. And again, I'm angling my hammer from side to side, spreading out that spade as much as possible. If I don't spend a lot of time towards the base of the leaf, it's going to end up too skinny and it's not going to look like a rose leaf. Now I go in for the final texture. I rotate my material. I keep my hammer hitting in about the same place and rotate my material underneath, subtly changing the angle so it gets steeper as it goes towards the point of my leaf. I'm just making that texture a little bit deeper. It can look really nice if you get a really deep texture with a big, wide fuller. This tool is called a hold fast. I'm wedging the hold fast into the pritchel hole, and now I'm going to chisel a line right down the center of my leaf. This is a little bit tricky. It can be hard to see. My glove is actually a little bit in the way. It's hard to see past the tool, which is why I'm holding it at an angle. It is better if I were holding it straight up and down. This is a curved chisel. What I'm doing is I'm putting one side of the curve into the groove and then rocking it up and then hitting. So I line it up every single time and then I hit. I'm pulling out just the edges of that leaf to give it a little bit more unevenness at the edge, and then at the low points of the edge of my leaf I am chiseling and cutting, shearing the edge to give it some serration. My apprentice here actually pointed out that it's a lot easier, it's not going to slip down as much if I put my soft jaws in. And actually my vise doesn't close all the way. It has like a 1/16 of an inch gap, so it wasn't tightening quite enough. Now I'm going to give it some curve using this bottom swage. It looks really nice if you get a tighter bottom swage, and then you can make a lot of little ripples just along the edge. But this works for now for what I'm doing. Eventually I'll make some more swage blocks. And then I'm going to give it a little curl on the end, which is, all of this little bit is optional. This is the last, bit of icing on the cake. I'm going to brush off the scale really well, and then I usually finish most of my indoor metal with beeswax. You can see the nice shiny beeswax newly applied there. What I'm using now is a product called Rub and Buff by Amico, the ceramics company. And I put a little bit of Rub and Buff on and then wipe off the excess, and that just highlights it and allows that texture to be a little less subtle. So thank you for watching, and thank you so much to my patrons on Patreon. I really appreciate it.